My entitled daughter refused to pay rent or help around the house, smirking. You're my parent, so it's your job to take care of me forever. When I finally set boundaries, she stole my jewelry and pawned it, laughing. Now you can't kick me out. Her confidence crumbled when the police arrived and announced, Actually, that's called theft, and you're about to learn a lesson in consequences. I'm a 52-year-old single father named Mark, living in a modest 3-bedroom house in Oak Park, a suburb just west of Chicago. My daughter, Jessica, is 22 and has been living with me since she graduated from college. Her mother and I divorced when she was 10, and since then, it's just been the two of us. I've always tried to provide for her, ensuring she had everything she needed to succeed. Jessica was a bright student, and I was proud when she earned her degree in communications. However, after graduation, she seemed content with staying at home, scrolling through social media, and hanging out with friends. I understood that the job market could be tough, so I didn't pressure her initially. But as months went by, I began to feel the strain of supporting both of us on my salary alone. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, I decided to address the issue. Jessica, I began cautiously, I've been thinking. Now that you've graduated, perhaps it's time to consider contributing a bit to the household expenses or helping out more around the house. She looked up from her plate, a smirk forming on her lips. You're my parent, she said nonchalantly. It's your job to take care of me forever. Her words stung. I had always believed in supporting my child, but I also believed in teaching responsibility. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. I understand that, Jess. But you're an adult now. It's important to learn how to manage responsibilities and contribute. She rolled her eyes. Whatever, Dad. Days turned into weeks, and Jessica's attitude remained unchanged. Dirty dishes piled up in the sink, laundry was left unattended, and she continued to live as if she were a guest in a hotel. I felt like a stranger in my own home. One afternoon, I returned from work to find the living room in disarray. Empty snack wrappers littered the floor, and the television blared some reality show. Jessica lounged on the couch, her eyes glued to her phone. Jessica, we need to talk, I said firmly. She sighed, putting her phone down. What now? This can't continue. If you're going to live here, you need to pay rent, or at least help out around the house. She laughed, a cold, mocking sound. And if I don't? You'll kick me out? I hesitated. The thought of forcing my own daughter out pained me, but I couldn't let this continue. Yes, I said finally. If you refuse to contribute, you'll have to find another place to live. She stood up, her eyes blazing with defiance. Fine. Do what you have to do. That night I barely slept. The decision weighed heavily on me, but I knew it was necessary. The next morning, I left a note on the kitchen table, giving her a month to find alternative accommodations. A week later, I noticed some of my belongings were missing. At first, it was small things, a watch, some cufflinks. But then I realized my late mother's jewelry was gone. Panic set in. Those pieces were irreplaceable, holding sentimental value beyond measure. I confronted Jessica about it. Jess, have you seen Grandma's jewelry? It's missing. She shrugged, not meeting my gaze. Nope. Something in her demeanor felt off. I decided to investigate further. Checking our shared computer, I found recent searches for local pawn shops. My heart sank. I visited a few shops nearby, and at the third one, my fears were confirmed. The owner recognized the pieces and confirmed they had been sold recently. He provided me with the transaction details, and there it was, Jessica's name and signature. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. Returning home, I confronted her. Jessica, I know you took Grandma's jewelry and pawned it. She didn't deny it. Instead, she smirked. Now you can't kick me out. You need me to get them back. Tears welled up in my eyes. How could you do this? Those pieces meant so much to me. She crossed her arms. Maybe you shouldn't have threatened to kick me out. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter had stolen from me, from her family, out of spite. Without another word, I left the room and called the police. I explained the situation, providing them with the pawn shop's information and the transaction details. An hour later, officers arrived at our home. Jessica's confidence seemed to waver as they questioned her. "Ma'am," one officer said, "selling property that doesn't belong to you is theft. We're going to have to take you in for further questioning." Jessica's face paled. "Wait, what? You're arresting me?" "Yes," the officer replied. "You have the right to remain silent." As they read her rights and placed her in handcuffs, she looked at me, panic evident in her eyes. "Dad, do something!" I felt a lump in my throat, but I knew this was a consequence of her actions. "I'm sorry, Jessica. I can't help you this time." The officers led her out, and I was left standing in the living room, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. In the days that followed, I managed to retrieve most of the jewelry from the pawn shop. Jessica faced charges but was released on bail. The experience seemed to shake her, and for the first time in months, she showed genuine remorse. "Dad," she said one evening, tears streaming down her face, "I'm so sorry. I messed up. I was angry and acted out. Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at my daughter, seeing the little girl I had raised, now grappling with the consequences of her actions. "Jessica, I love you. But trust has to be rebuilt. We can work through this, but things have to change." She nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. From that point on, Jessica began to take responsibility. She found a job, started contributing to the household, and attended counseling sessions to address her behavior. Our relationship, though strained, began to heal. Life has a way of teaching lessons in the most unexpected ways. For Jessica, it was a harsh wake-up call. For me, it was a reminder of the complexities of parenthood and the importance of setting boundaries, even when it hurts. Things were calm for a while. Not peaceful, just calm. Jessica was going through the motions. She worked part-time at a small retail store downtown, paid a bit toward groceries, and kept her room clean. I thought we were slowly rebuilding trust. We even watched a few movies together. It felt like I had my daughter back, even if something still felt off. Then I started getting letters from credit card companies. The first one came addressed to me, but it didn't look like a bill I recognized. When I opened it, my heart sank. It was a card I never applied for, maxed out. $6,700 balance. I don't use that card. I didn't even know it existed. A week later, another letter came. This one showed a $4,300 balance. Same story. And then another. My stomach was tight with dread. I called the companies, gave them my info, and they confirmed the cards were opened under my name, my social security number, my address. I knew it. Jessica. I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to be sure. I pulled my credit report. There were 5 cards. All recent. All maxed. Some charges were clearly hers: beauty products, online shopping, food delivery, Uber rides. All while she stood in front of me with that sorry face, helping fold towels like everything was fine. I felt sick. Like a fool. She had promised to change. Promised to be better. And here she was, digging deeper behind my back. That night, I waited until she got home from work. She tossed her bag on the kitchen counter and opened the fridge like she owned the place. "Jessica, we need to talk." She froze. "What now?" "I got some letters. From credit card companies. Ones I never signed up for." Her face was unreadable. She closed the fridge slowly, not meeting my eyes. "I didn't do anything," she muttered. "Don't lie to me." She sighed, arms crossed. "I was going to pay it off." I stared at her. "So you did do it?" She stayed silent. "You opened 5 credit cards in my name. Maxed them out?" "That's fraud, Jessica. I said I was going to pay it back. I just needed help getting started. You were so uptight about money, you stole my identity." I shouted, louder than I meant to. My voice echoed in the kitchen. My hands were shaking. You lied to my face every day for months. After you already got arrested once for stealing. After you said you were sorry. She looked like she wanted to yell back, but she didn't. Her mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. I don't even know who you are anymore, I said. She stormed off to her room and slammed the door. I didn't go after her. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of papers and bills. I called my bank the next morning and filed a fraud report. I filed a police report too. I hated doing it. But this was bigger than a fight. This was criminal. The officer who came by looked familiar. It was the same one who had taken her in the first time. He recognized the address. She did it again, huh? I nodded. He took the report seriously. I gave them everything, statements, screenshots, emails. They left with a copy of my report, and I knew they'd be back. I didn't warn her this time. I just let her sit in her room, pretending nothing was happening. 3 days later, they came back with a warrant. She wasn't dressed for it, just sweatpants and a hoodie. When they knocked on her door and told her to come out, she looked at me like I had pulled the trigger myself. You called the cops on me again? She hissed. You did this to yourself. They handcuffed her again. This time, she didn't cry. She didn't say a word. She's being charged with identity theft and fraud now. They say she could face real jail time. Not county holding. Not probation. Time. I wish I could say I feel good. That justice is being done. But I don't. I feel broken. Like I failed her. Like she failed me. I'm ashamed of what she's done, but more ashamed that it's come to this twice. I raised her better than this. At least I thought I did. Now I'm trying to clean up the mess, disputing charges, freezing my credit, locking everything down. And I still have to go to court. I'll have to testify. Against my own kid. People keep asking me if I'm going to forgive her again. I don't have an answer this time. I don't know who she is anymore. All I know is, this house is quiet again. Too quiet. 2 weeks passed after Jessica was taken in again. I hadn't heard from her directly, but her public defender called me. Said she was asking for help with bail. I said no. The line went quiet for a moment before the lawyer said, She asked if you'd at least come see her. I didn't respond. I hung up. I wasn't ready. Not after everything. But that night, I got a text from an unknown number. Just a photo. It was a picture of Jessica, inside what looked like a holding cell. Someone must have snuck it in, probably another inmate. Below it, bet she regrets stealing now. Your princess ain't so special in here. No name. No reply. Just that message. I stared at it for a long time. Was someone threatening her? Was she being bullied in jail? I deleted the text, but something didn't sit right. I started digging. I checked her social media accounts. Her Instagram hadn't been active in weeks, but someone was still watching her page, liking random photos of her and commenting strange stuff. One said, Bet Daddy Dearest is sleeping fine these days. Another said, We know what you did. Something was wrong. I went to the jail the next morning and asked to speak with someone. They said Jessica was being kept in isolation, her request. Apparently, she'd been involved in some kind of incident inside. They wouldn't give details, but they hinted it wasn't a simple fight. They asked if she had any enemies. Enemies? She barely had friends anymore. The few friends she had ghosted her after the first arrest. Or so I thought. I went back home and started going through some of her old stuff. Her room was still a mess. Drawers half empty, clothes shoved in corners. I opened a box under her bed. It was filled with old notebooks and random receipts. But tucked inside one notebook, there were letters. They were from someone named Nico. At first, I didn't recognize the name. Then I remembered, he was an ex-boyfriend from her freshman year. A guy I never liked. Trouble. He'd been caught dealing at a party, kicked off campus, and disappeared. The letters were strange, obsessive, angry. He blamed Jessica for ruining his life. Said she owed him, and that she would regret walking away. One of the last ones said, "You think your dad can save you again? Watch me." My blood ran cold. I handed the letters to the police. I told them about the text, the social media comments, everything. They started an investigation. And that's when things got worse. 2 days later, I came home to find my back door wide open. Nothing stolen, but the door had clearly been forced. A kitchen drawer was pulled out, knives missing. My laptop was gone. But nothing else. Not the TV. Not jewelry. It felt targeted. The police took it seriously this time. They found fingerprints on the drawer. It was him, Nico. He had been watching the house. Watching me. They finally told me the full story from jail. Jessica had gotten involved with him again, behind my back. He'd been manipulating her, saying he'd help her make money fast, get out of debt, fix things with me. He told her to open those cards. Said they'd pay them off together. But once she did, he vanished. Left her with the debt and a threat, "Don't say anything, or he'd come after me." She kept quiet. Even when arrested. Even in jail. Now, she was trying to protect me. That photo? That message? It was him. He was the one threatening her. Watching both of us. I didn't know what scared me more, what he'd already done, or what he might still try to do. The police issued a warrant for him. I had to install a security system. Cameras. Motion lights. I started carrying pepper spray, locking every door twice. Jessica, still locked up, was suddenly no longer just a villain. She'd done wrong, yeah? But she'd also been used. Manipulated. Threatened. And she was too scared, or maybe too ashamed, to tell me. She finally called me from jail. Her voice cracked as soon as she said, "Dad?" I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just asked, "Why didn't you tell me about him?" She broke down. Told me everything. How he reappeared months ago, saying he could help her, fix everything, between us. Said he'd found a way to make fast money, fraud. Said it wasn't really illegal if it was family. And if it was, no one would press charges. He fed her lies. Told her I'd forgive her again. Told her I was the problem. That I deserved to lose a little for how I pressured her. She admitted she believed him. For a while. But when she got arrested again, he disappeared. And then the threats started. Now she was scared. She wanted help. She wanted to talk. She wanted a lawyer. A real one. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. My kid made terrible choices. Hurt me more than anyone ever has. But now I see there's more to the story. The detective working Jessica's case called me again a few days later. They found Nico. He'd been staying in a rented basement apartment in Berwyn, a few miles from my house. Fake name. No job. Just watching, waiting. When they arrested him, they found a burner phone full of messages to Jessica, and worse, photos of me, our house, even one of me getting into my car. He'd been following us. The texts told a clear story. He manipulated her, threatened her, used her to get close to me and my finances. He even bragged in one message about how dumb she was for trusting him and how he'd make that old man pay for ruining his life years ago. They charged him with stalking, coercion, fraud, and breaking and entering. I was allowed to give a victim impact statement at his arraignment. I stood in that courtroom, staring at the guy who tried to ruin both our lives. He didn't look dangerous, skinny, quiet, almost smug, but I felt hatred burning in my chest like nothing I'd ever felt before. I didn't hold back. I let you into my life through my daughter. You turned her into a criminal and made me question if I even raised her right. You watched my home. You stole my safety. You don't just deserve jail. You deserve to be forgotten. Jessica was sitting behind me, in cuffs, head down. She didn't look up once. When Nico was taken away, I turned to leave the courtroom, but I stopped beside her. You still made those choices. Don't forget that. She nodded. Didn't say a word. Weeks went by. She stayed in jail. Her lawyer tried to argue she was coerced, mentally manipulated, under emotional duress. There was truth to it, but the court still held her responsible. She pled guilty to identity theft and credit fraud. Because it was her first major offense, and because she cooperated fully with the investigation, the judge gave her 3 years. Not probation. Not a slap on the wrist. Prison time. I went home that day and stood in her empty room for over an hour. I didn't touch anything. Just looked around. There were still posters on the wall, notes from high school friends, a cracked phone charger on the floor. The quiet hit me harder than any argument we ever had. I got another call a month later. From the pawn shop owner. He said a woman came in, asking about the same jewelry Jessica had pawned months back. Not to buy, just asking if it was still around. She left no name but looked nervous. I checked my cameras. Nothing. But 2 days later, someone broke into my garage. Tools everywhere. Nothing taken. Just opened and left a mess. Like they were looking for something. I reported it. Police came, dusted for prints. Same as last time, Nico's. He had sent someone. Or maybe someone loyal to him was still out there. I had to face the truth. This wasn't just about Jessica anymore. It was about me. My mistakes. I trusted too easily. I ignored red flags. I gave second chances when they weren't earned. I thought love could fix everything. That's not how the world works. So I started making changes. I sold the house. Left Oak Park. Moved 3 states away to live near my brother in Montana. Quiet town, cold air, space to breathe. I didn't leave a forwarding address. Changed my number. Told only close friends. Jessica didn't know where I went. I didn't tell her. I needed to heal. And she needed to sit in that cell and think about everything she had done, not just to me, but to herself. Before I left, I sent her a letter. Not emotional. Not warm. Just honest. I hope you use this time to become someone better. Not for me. For yourself. Because the person you are now is someone I can't let into my life again. I never got a letter back. Last I heard, Nico tried to get a plea deal and failed. He's serving 6 years. Minimum. Jessica still has time to go. Me? I'm rebuilding. Got a small job at a hardware store. Built a new routine. No more enabling. No more blind forgiveness. If she ever finds me one day, maybe we'll talk. But she'll have to show up as someone completely different. Because the girl who stole from me, lied to me, and chose someone like Nico over her own father? That girl doesn't exist to me anymore. That part of my life is over. And I survived it.